Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Wednesday webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about transforming data in Power BI. So first, we're going to go ahead and talk about answering these basic 6 questions we've had since childhood about anything. First one is, who should know how to transform data? Ideally, the people that'll be transforming the data are going to be the report creators or administrators. So if you are more of an end user, this may not be something that you would do a lot, but if you want some Power BI knowledge, this is still the right place for you. But this task is really going to fall to those that are connecting to the data sources, creating the reports, and deciding how they're going to be used. Why is it important? So a lot of people like to get into Power BI and just start building reports. I always warn people to pause and take some time to talk about cleaning up and transforming their data. And there's 2 reasons that it is important. When we look at our example report here in a little bit, we will see that data can come over a little muddy. It can cause issues with your charts and reports if it's not all consistent and clean. So that's reason number 1. The second reason it's important is for using the correct verbiage that you utilize within your company. So Power BI has a lot of powerful analytics, and they have a question and answer feature that end users can use to ask questions about the data. It's only going to work if the data is in the same verbiage that someone would use. So if your company calls it financials, but everything is coming over, dollars spent, cost, and they search for a question saying, show me the financials, it's obviously not going to come up with an answer because that verbiage is different. So it's very important that when you're creating the reports and going through your data that you do set it to the common verbiage used within your company. When should you do it? You can transform data at any time. There's multiple ways to do it, as with anything within Power BI, but I do recommend spending the time to clean up your data right away when you connect to it. It makes it easier in the long run. You'll have less hassle creating your reports, and you'll just have that more consistent feel if you're even looking at that same verbiage when you're creating the report. Saves a lot of headaches to do it at the onset of a project. What different transformations can you do? And we'll spend some time looking at them here in the demo in a little bit. There are different text transformations you can do, from making things all capitalized or all lowercase. You can do text transformations. There's different numeric transformations and date transformations you can do. You can add columns, you can split columns. So there's quite a few different types of transformations you can do. We can look at replacing errors and values, and we'll take a look at them in more detail here in a little bit. Where do you access these? We will see exactly where within the demo here. The main area for transforming your data is called the Power Query Editor, and that is available through the Power BI desktop version only. So the Power BI desktop version is available free for download if you haven't done that previously. And that's where you can access the query editor, which can allow you to transform the data. You can still connect to data and view your reports and create reports within the online version, the Power BI Pro, but it doesn't have that access to the query editor. So you do need the desktop version to be able to do these transformations. And how do you do it? I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that because we're going to get right into the demo here so you can see exactly how you would do that. So let's go ahead and transform some data. So the first thing I want to pull up here is just an example report that I have put together for our July cell phone sales. And some of the things that I want to point out, this is what we're going to fix when we get into transforming the data. So here, looking at our plan type, there's nothing wrong with this visual, except for that our plans are coming over in IDs versus, what is this plan? A salesperson might know exactly what the SU20 plan is or anything like that. But if your reports are going to be used at different levels, or even an executive level, they may not necessarily know what the IDs are. So we're going to want to make this more descriptive so we know exactly what plans people have purchased, regardless of who's reading the report. Here in this visual, we see it's just total sold by day. We've summed up the difference between phone cost and accessory cost for the day, and it's showing us each individual day for the month of July. There's nothing wrong with this visual if that's what we were looking for. What I want to create with this report is to look closer at what are our highest selling days of the week for staffing reasons, or just to understand, if we're selling more on the weekend, maybe that's when we should unveil some new products or, a new sale or something that we are promoting. So we want to look more into the day of the week instead of just the day itself. Here on total phones and accessories sold by type, we can see that we have a few different phone types we've sold. Most cell companies would probably have a lot more phones. I just picked a handful for the demo data, but we're going to look at dividing this up, maybe looking overall by brand first, and then we could look by phone later if we wanted. So we just know, are we selling more Samsung or Apple all together, those types of things. Down here with the couple salesperson graphs I have, the first thing we notice on this graph is we have multiple Leonards and multiple Howards. Things just aren't looking very consistent, and knowing that we only have one Leonard in the store, he shouldn't have two bars here. So we need to make some changes to the way the names are coming over. And this can happen if you have any cell type where it's a typable text. People put spaces accidentally before or after, capital, non-capital. You can see it happen all the time with any text field. So we want to clean that up. And then over here on accessories sold by salesperson, what we're doing is we are totaling how much the salesperson sold in accessories, and we want to see overall for the month. But a couple of things that we notice here is there's a lot of lines for Howard and Leonard, and we want them to sum up for per salesman just to have a single line. We also can see here that this is not in currency, it's just in whole numbers. And over here we have a calculation based on, the idea is the percent of all the accessory cost that was spent on just cases. I don't know that any company really would want to track that, but you can do calculations like that. And this is to show us some errors that have come over. And this is also the cell that is causing us some problems with these multiple lines because this particular column is not coming over as a number. It's not allowing it to summarize, which is why we have all these individual lines. So let's get into looking at how we can clean this data up. And normally I would recommend doing this before you start putting visuals on there, but it's helpful to see this so you know what issues you could run into if you don't have your data clean. And also if you were creating a report and you start to see some of these issues pop up, you would know some things you could look at to fix that. So to get into the Power Query Editor, you can access it when you first connect to your data or at any point in time. And I'm going to show you first when you are connecting to data. So let's just say we're going to use an Excel data point, and I've got my demo data here. And I'm going to click Open. And I'm going to say this is the sheet, which is the same sheet I've already connected to before, but I just want to show you where you could go. The options when you first connect to data is you can load the data, which will bring it straight to this canvas. You'll have your fields over here on the right-hand side, and you can start building visuals. Or if you select Transform Data, that will bring you straight into the Power Query Editor. If you know you want to transform your data right away, it is helpful to do it when you connect, or if you are going to be making a lot of transformations to a large group of data, I recommend transforming the data first because it can save you that initial load time. If you're doing millions upon millions of rows of data, it can take 10, 15 minutes to load, whereas you can get into transforming your data right away. And to cancel out of this, we've got our report started here. So at any time, if you want to access the Power Query Editor, up here in the gray toolbar, you will just select Transform Data. And it's popping up a new window, and we can see here in the title, we're now in the Power Query Editor. If you had multiple data sources you'd connected to over here on the left-hand side, it would have those data sources. We only have one, so we only see sheet 1, but they would be listed here if you had multiple. Let's see if I can get this out of the way here. We can see on the toolbar, it automatically defaults to the home toolbar, and there's a few transformations you can make. There's a little area here for transform, but there also is a tab specifically titled Transform. And when we select this tab, this gives us more options for transforming our different columns. And we'll look at a few different ways to access them as we start. So the first thing I want to do is we are going to go ahead and transform this plan purchased so that it makes sense when we're reading it. So I'm going to highlight the plan purchased column, and you can either choose an option up here, if we want to extract or format. If we do format, these are the different text transformations you can make. You can do all lowercase, uppercase, capitalize each word, trim and clean, which we'll look at those in a second. Or you can always right click on the column name, and that will bring up a whole bunch of options for what you can do with that column. And this is where if you go to transform here, that's where you can see those text transformations as well. But we're interested in replacing the values. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the value. And I'm just going to go down the list, our GMU 20, that's going to be our Get More Unlimited plan. This is going to be a test of my typing skills when I'm doing it in front of all of you guys here. JK is our Just Kids plan. So we're going to go ahead and replace that. We're going to replace the PM20 is our Play More Unlimited plan. And we're going to do our Start Unlimited. And the last one we have here is we're going to do our Prepaid Unlimited plan. So you can see as I was replacing those values over here on the right-hand side, it is tracking every change I have made. If I had typed in correctly and I'm like, wait a minute, the Play More is wrong, or whichever one is wrong, if I click any of these little gear icons next to a particular step, it will open that step and I can change the wording and it will update that. But it looks like, oh, I just made a mistake in showing you that. Let's take off that H here. Okay, we did pretty good with that. So the next thing I want to clean up is this salesperson column. There's a couple of things I want to do. The first thing I'm going to do is right click on the column and I am going to rename it because this is pulling across kind of a, I guess it's not really a nickname, but more of a schema name than actually saying salesperson. And if someone was to use the Q&A, they would say, show me this by salesperson. So I'm going to go down to rename, and I'm going to rename the column salesperson. The next thing I want to do is we can see that there's a lot of spaces before the name Leonard here. We saw some of the ones capitalized, uncapitalized. So in the text transformations, we're going to talk about trim and clean. So trim will take off all those excess spaces. Clean gets rid of any unprintable characters. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to trim the data down, and you can see now they're all appearing to the left-hand side of the cell. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to transform and capitalize each word. It's my personal preference for how I like to see names. And that'll get rid of those upper and lowercase differences that we have. Depending on the column type, which you can see column type in here, these are text columns. They have the ABC next to them. Here we have a calendar. This is a date column. So when we right click on date of purchase and we go to transform, there's some different options there. And with each one of these, you can choose just display the year, the start of the year, the end of the year, same things for quarter, month. Month also includes days in month or name of month, week, day, and then there's the regular text transformations. We had talked about wanting to see, by the day, how often, what day of the week are people purchasing things. So let's say we're like, hey, we want to know the name of day. So I'm going to go in and transform to name of day. What this has done is it has replaced the data for the date of purchase. And I don't necessarily want to do that. I still want to save the date of purchase. So I don't want to actually use transform in this case because it will replace the data. So that's one thing to be aware of when you're looking at these transformations. I will show you in a few moments how we do that without replacing the data. So we didn't want to do that, and we see here it says extracted day name. Right here, there is a delete option, and I'm going to delete that step, and we have our date of purchase back. When we look at the phone cost, we can see it's a 1.2. This means it's a decimal number column type. And if we right-click here and go to transform, there are some numeric options for transformations. You can round, you can square roots, you can square or cube. You still can go to text transformations if that's something you want to do in the trim and clean, things like that. But they do have some mathematical transformations you can make as well. We're not going to do that because we have our numbers like we want them. The other thing we can see and transform in here is this one is a decimal number, but these, because I just had whole numbers for the amount that accessories cost, they're coming over as just 1, 2, 3, a whole number. So we might want to change them to decimal number. If we would have a decimal number potentially in the future, we definitely would want these to be a decimal number, because if this column is set as a whole number in all your reports, and then later on you have a $25.50, it may automatically round that for you or cause errors with your report. So we're going to switch them over, and switching a column type is as easy as clicking on the column type here, the 1, 2, 3, and changing it to a decimal number. And you can see it has changed type here, and it now shows 1.2. This is especially important if you're ever going to replace values and you have currently what may be a number column. Like a lot of things come over as 0 and 1 within software systems, and that's the yes and no options. And if that comes over as a number column and you try and replace it with the words yes and no, you would receive an error because it's not a text column type. So you would first need to change it to a text column type. But with this, we're just going to change them all to decimal numbers because could potentially have a decimal. And then we can see here we have something with a little bit of red. And this is Power BI's way of telling you there's some problems with this column. And we have some errors in this column. And the problem we're having is this column is calculating the total amount spent on cases divided by the total amount spent on accessories. Some people didn't buy accessories, so we're dividing by 0. Because that causes all kinds of problems in the math world, we have errors here in our cells. So one of the things that you can do within Power BI is you can replace your errors. We know this error is because dividing by 0 doesn't work. But we also know that if the total accessory cost is 0, they definitely didn't spend any of their money on cases. So we're going to right click here and we're going to go to replace errors. And we're going to say any cell that has an error, put that value at 0. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And now you can see that the bar is completely green and we don't see those errors anymore. The next thing I want to do with this is, because there was errors and some issues, it was coming across as potentially a text or number column. And that's why we were having those errors where we had multiple lines with the salesman. So we're going to change this, and this is a percentage. Now we can see it switched over to %, and when we go back and look at the chart, you will see the differences that we can do now that this is a numeric type column. There was one other name here. Here at the beginning, our customer name, instead of being typed out, is coming over with its schema name. So we are also going to rename that one. Now, I've been using the right click to access these transformation types a lot, but up here within the toolbar, if I select rename, I can do the same thing. It really is personal preference, whatever is easiest to you. I've gotten used to the right click, but you definitely can do it from the toolbar as well. Just make sure you have the correct column highlighted when you select something from the toolbar so you don't run into frustrations. Okay, so the next thing we are going to talk about is extracting data and splitting columns. So let's go ahead, we're going to do this with the phone type, and we want to split it out so we can know, is this Apple, Samsung, Motorola, and then we want to also know what phone type it is, but we're really interested in being able to group by that brand. So the first thing we're going to look at is we want to extract some data from this. So I'm going to go to extract, and we're going to say we want to extract just that brand portion that comes before a delimiter. You can also choose length, like give me the first, the length extracts the total, how many characters are within a cell. You can also do like the first 3 characters or the last 3 characters. But we're going to say text before the delimiter, and we say, we're just going to enter a space here because we want to see the brand before the space. And we're going to go ahead and click OK. What happens here is it did take out just that brand, but it also got rid of the actual phone model types because we did the transform, and that takes place right within the cell. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. The better way to achieve what we want is to split the column. So here, the split column option, you can do it by delimiter, number of characters, positions, when it changes from lower and uppercase, digit and non-digit can be helpful if you have some product numbers or types that might differentiate between those types of characters. But we're going to go ahead and say by delimiter. It is automatically defaulting to space because it is recognized that that's the only delimiter in this cell. And you can choose to do it leftmost, rightmost, or each occurrence. Well, we don't want to do it at each occurrence. We're going to say just at the leftmost. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And you can see here now we have 2 columns. We have column, the first column here shows us the brand, second column here shows us the phone model. Okay. And because I want to show you one other way that you can do this and how you can extract without deleting, we're going to go ahead and delete this change we made. We're not going to change the column type, and we're not going to split it. So even though this isn't on the transform tab, I always include it with transformation because it is a way to get the data to appear how you need it to for your reporting. So we're going to go to the Add Columns tab here. We're not going to talk a lot about custom columns or conditional columns. That's a separate topic to be covered at another time. And I believe we do have some blog posts out there as well. But we're going to look at the extract here. This is just so you understand the extract under transform will replace the data from the column you're working in. Extract on the add columns will take the data and place it in a new column for you. And 9 times out of 10, that's what someone wants to do. So here we're going to still do the phone type. We're going to go to extract, and we're going to do that same text before delimiter like we did before. We're going to choose our space and click OK. You can see that this cell looks exactly the same. But if we scroll all the way to the right, we now have our brand column. So we're going to go ahead and rename this, and we are going to say phone brand. The split column probably would have worked in this example, but just wanted to show you how both of them work. The other thing that we want to do, we're going to do this with the date of purchase, and you can see we're still under add column. and we're going to go to date. And this is going to look just like the date transformations that are available. And we're going to go down to day, and we want to see the name of the day. And when we scroll all the way to the right now, we see day name, and this has those days of the week. Once you've made all your transformations, in order to see it on your report, you do need to close and apply the changes. If you just close it, you will not see those changes to your report or be able to use them. So let's go ahead and close and apply. It will take a moment here and apply those changes. And if there are changes, you saw that brief line I had up here letting me know that there were changes that needed to be applied. So some of the things we can see off the bat, right here on the total sales by salesperson, we can see we only have 4 now. They're looking consistent, they're all together. So that has achieved one of our goals. Here with the plan type, I didn't think about how long our plan names were here, but you can see it does have the plan purchased in there, and you can see the full name. We're gonna make this one smaller anyways. So total sold by day, we need to make a quick change to this in order to see by the day of the week. When we initially set this up, we had set it up with the date of purchase being the axis here, but we want to replace that with the day name. So I'm gonna get rid of date of purchase, and I'm gonna pull that new column of day name over here. And now we can see that Saturday and Sunday, definitely we spend that's the highest sales we've had. Then Tuesday, Thursday. This is summarizing our data. We could look at averages as well if we wanted to, and then we could figure out staffing needs or things like that. For this total phones and accessories sold by type, we have phone type here, so we had the individual phone type, but let's change that over to phone brand. And now we can see Samsung is our top seller. That probably wouldn't be accurate, but you never know. Apple and Samsung very close all the time. But you can see now we could say, okay, we've got a lot of Samsung to promote, or maybe we need to do something about Motorola because no one's buying it. Gives you some data that way. And the last thing we need to do, this accessory sold by salesperson is still appearing with multiple lines, but we do see that the percentage looks a lot better here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to select that, and the reason we still have multiple lines is it isn't summarizing or averaging this percentage. So when I go here, I see percent on cases as one of my values, and I'm going to click this down arrow, and I'm going to change it. I want to see the average. Now when I do that, it does sum it up for us, gives us the average, and we're down to just those 4 lines per salesperson. So this is something that I can work with a little bit easier. We can see the data and know roughly how the salespeople are doing. I just want to show you a couple transformations that exist outside of the Power Query Editor, and these are called modeling options within the Power BI report canvas here. But just to clean up the report a little bit, make it look a little bit more professional, what I want to do is adjust. These are coming across as decimal numbers now, but we can see that they're not currency. Nothing is coming across as currency. When you select a field type, so if we want to say our cases cost here, you see that the tab here is giving you information. It's your column tools, and it is telling you some information about that particular column. And we're looking to format this column. It's coming across as a whole number, and we want to change it over to a currency. When we do that, you can see here that it is changed to have the $sign. Another thing you can do is you could add in decimal points if you want the decimal points or not. It is just auto deciding for you at this point in time, but you can tell it to do that manually. So we would do the same thing for all of our different currency columns, and then that will change on the face of the report where they will all start to have that $sign in front of them. The other thing that you can do that we don't really need to do in this case, but you can define dates and how you want them to appear as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this date of purchase. And under the format section here, you can see it's defaulting to the long version of a date, and you can select how you would like your date to appear. Not that we have that on our report here, but that is something else that you can do. So that gives you a brief overview, a really quick kind of rundown on transforming your data, but I do maintain this is a very important piece of any Power BI project that you are going to undertake. With that being said, are there any questions, you guys? Wonderful. Well, I thank you for spending some time with me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you have any further Power BI questions, you can take a look at our library of webinars, read our blog, or certainly reach out, and we are more than happy to help you. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.